Okay, here we are, episode 400. Gonna be talking to Dr. Gary Roberts. Looking over my system right now, making sure everything's working the way it's supposed to. Looking good. So, we'll be starting in 20 minutes. So, if you're watching the Uncut or however you're watching this, you'll probably want to skip ahead a little bit. We will be talking primarily about pistol terminal ballistics. Gonna be a cool discussion. The panel setup just right for this. I'm looking forward to it as per the norm. But yeah, this is also number 400. That's a lot of episodes. And if you consider they're all like 12 hours each, that's millions of hours, clearly. So yeah, you'll probably want to fast forward a little bit. And then as soon as people start getting added in as panelists, uh, conversation obviously starts. So stand by. We'll be starting shortly. Well, two of us are here, so that's good.
Yes, indeed.
Now we just need to wait for the rest of the people. So Chuck Haggard said he might be able to make it. And then I got an update saying, yes, he should be able to be here. And I told him 8 p.m. So he's got 10 minutes. He better run.
I've got an hour or two.
Okay.
No more than two, though.
Oh, sure. I was hoping to get, who else? Reached out to Pressburg. Didn't hear back. Chris Baker with Lucky Gunner, I thought would be nice to have on.
Yeah, I don't like those guys. It'll be interesting. Their stuff is generally shit.
Okay. And let's see here.
Why do they always use that fucking synthetic shit?
Oh, I know why. I can tell you why.
Yeah.
Less effort and it's available.
So is regular ordnance gel, readily available, and it's super easy to make.
Yeah.
Any church or school or restaurant that has a refrigerator that you can put in a fucking Rubbermaid container full of gel, toss it in there for a day and you're ready to rock.
Yeah.
You can even make something in your garage where you take like a shipping container or one of those big cattle feed things, put a bunch of ice and shit in it and just chuck the thing in there.
Yeah. I've never experienced it. I've heard, but yeah, I rely on people like you.
I mean, they say, oh, but then you can compare between things. You're comparing shit against shit. You get shit. That whole garbage in, garbage out thing. They did just do a nice thing with about the FBI 10 millimeter. It had some nice pictures of Fackler in our old lab at Letterman. That was kind of sweet.
Oh. So what I have, ultimately, I thought it would be nice to go through what do sub and duty caliber pistols do to flesh or people.
They poke holes in them.
Yes. And then discuss wad cutters.
They poke holes in people.
And fluted solids.
They poke holes in people.
I like this. Fast and light for caliber in pistol.
Yes, they either poke shallow holes or deeper holes.
Okay. Also, I thought it would be cool to kind of discuss exactly what the temp cavity is. And
it's a temporary area of stretch that stretches the tissue for just a brief microsecond and snaps back.
And how that may relate to wounding.
It generally doesn't.
And this is gonna be a highlight reel that has all the answers.
90% of what I see on YouTube, they conflate temporary and permanent cavities. They get them completely mixed up.
Yes. What else? Oh, I don't know how to articulate this one. Basically, the topic was loss of institutional knowledge.
Yes. And oh my gosh, this is huge.
Good. And deliberate shedding of knowledge to replace it for something new. And so I think that was from John Hearn, and I really like that one. And so when someone like that brings up that kind of a topic, it's like, oh, you need to be on the panel so you can be part of this.
Yeah, that since the dawn of the global war on terror after 9/11, and the rise of the internet, we have seemed to have lost all of our institutional knowledge, particularly as all of the good wound ballistics knowledge is being classified or restricted.
Oh,
so a general law enforcement agency and Joe Public citizen has no ability to get anything that's accurate.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Mm-hmm. Anything worthwhile, you ain't going to see anymore.
Oh, because my own theory, as you were discussing this, is what's happening is there's so much crap being published on YouTube. People are using that to replace it with the real information. I was in a conversation with someone who they were talking about, well, Fackler, his studies are old and that doesn't apply. And I had to ask, okay, have physics changed? Has human physiology changed? No, we're still dealing with the same constants. How is Fackler's information outdated?
Even if it was outdated, organizations like the Joint Service Wound Ballistics Team, the CTTSO TISWIG ammunition study, the joint FBI USMC study that was done, all of those have been done in the 21st century, and they build upon Fackler's work.
Yeah.
And they don't do anything different than what Fackler did.
Yeah.
We have more data now, and we have refined certain things. Like we no longer calibrate the block; we validate the block.
Yeah.
There's little subtle things like that, but in general, the principles are the same.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, it's interesting how people get upset when the term, yeah, pistol bullets, yeah, they're poking holes. People get upset about that. Yeah, well, what about this? What about temp cavity?
well, I
Yeah,
sent you
temp.
that picture that showed the slowest projectile made the largest permanent and temporary cavity
Yeah,
and had the most penetration depth.
yeah,
Why? It had more mass.
more mass. Yeah,
So if you wanted to make a hole, we'd be using Civil War muskets,
yeah,
60 caliber, 70 caliber, or shotgun slugs. But there's other factors that go into it,
yeah,
like controllability, round count, um, intermediate barrier penetration. Although large, heavy mass things tend to crush the glass very well.
yeah,
Maybe not steel, but glass.
yeah,
Depends on what you're trying to hit and what you're trying to penetrate. And people conflate and get mistaken about the wrong shit all
yeah,
the time.
yeah. Well, and I think it's just so much easier to go on YouTube and find your favorite YouTuber and just go base your entire personality off whatever they're saying and
And
not
yet,
look
have
into
they
stuff.
done a statistically significant sample?
Oh no, no, it's a YouTube video or it's them saying this is what's happening.
You know, and every law enforcement agency and military unit in the country can go directly to the FBI, BRF,
Mhm.
get the data from them.
Yeah,
They still do the best testing there. There's a reason SOCOM gets all their testing from the FBI and not from Picatinny or Aberdeen or wherever.
yeah.
I mean,
Well, for me, what's wonderful is to get a hold of you, send you a text if I have a question about something. Buford Boone has been a good resource when I
Buford's
ask
awesome.
about. Yeah.
So when Lucky Gunner just did their 10 millimeter video, did they call Buford to iron some things out? Clearly not.
Oh, I hadn't seen it.
It's not bad, but they could have picked up the phone and called Buford
Yeah.
or me or anyone that has all that data that are sitting at our fingertips.
Yeah. Yeah. That has been absolutely fantastic. And it's helped me better understand the bigger picture. And so for me to understand and actually not just saying, yeah, they poke holes. Well, this is why they're just poking holes.
Yep.
Makes so much sense.
Yep.
And unfortunately, it's lost on a lot of people. And people just, well, nowadays, everything is about the easy button. Everything's fast, everything's now, and you don't need to put in any effort.
Well, we've lost all of our history.
Yeah.
Yeah. We'll talk about this a bit. When do you want to start?
Uh,
Minutes, 3 minutes, something like that.
oh, Fred, if you want to jump on, this is one of those episodes. If you're interested, do you know Fred Lucas?
No, I don't think so. But then I might.
So Fred, how do I describe you, Fred? Worked at what's the base up by Chicago?
Great Lake.
Yeah, worked on a bunch of rifles for some special organizations or special groups. Yeah,
We're talking about like the training center in Great Lakes?
It's
NTC or a different place?
I think if he messages me, I can tell you. If he's listening, if his audio's on. But yeah, currently he's just a big outdoorsy guy, but he's always fun to have on and to discuss what he's been through. And dang it, or maybe it was Indiana.
Indiana would be Crane.
Crane.
Yeah, Indiana would be Crane. That's a whole different ballgame.
Yeah, he said it's Cywar.
Crane is very specialized. That is, yeah. We'll talk about that a bit too.
Yeah. He got you the BMT bullets back in the day.
Yes, he did.
So, Fred, if you want to jump on, you're welcome to.
We were able to put a fucking nail in that coffin.
Cool. See, now I'm waiting to see if he's going to say, yes, add me. Or, no, it's okay. I'm just going to sit here and smoke my pipe. So it appears that, yeah, Chuck, I know he was just on the road. Okay, yeah, he'll jump on. Fred will jump on. He said it's not like he can add much. That's okay.
We all add what we have, man.
Exactly.
Was Gelhouse available?
He got the invite. So I have a closed chat among law enforcement people that are on the podcast quite frequently. So I can just text him as well. Yeah, he's not a neighbor, but he lives up here in Utah now.
Yeah, he moved. Lucky duck.
Well, he came up a month or two ago for some department training of mine. It was just nice to have him.
Yep.
And we shot.
Knowledge.
Oh man, he's great. And we shot up cars, and he brought some shotguns and some slugs and some various buckshot. And it was cool to shoot through minivans and other things with all that stuff.
Shotgun slugs are probably the best thing for defeating vehicles other than bonded 308. It's really hard to go wrong with one of those.
Yeah, it was cool. It was definitely a hole puncher.
Yep.
Well, and so the reason I thought it would be nice also to discuss wad cutters is because I don't think they've necessarily made it. Oh, there's Chuck. I don't know if they've necessarily made a comeback, but they've definitely, they're getting attention. That's kind of cool. And for a little tiny snubby.
Yeah, in a little snubby, they have more controllability and they actually punch a better hole with better penetration, except for glass. They're shit against glass.
Okay. Yeah, versus, well, if our jacketed hollow points can't expand because they have insufficient velocity because of lack of barrel.
I run a wad cutter mine.
Yeah.
So I run a cylinder of wad cutters, and I have hollow points to reload
because it's easier.
Reloading with wad cutters is slow.
Yeah. So Fred, want to do a quick audio check? And your video is off, as is Chuck's. I don't know if you want to be visible. No, Haggard.
Haggard, there we go. Haven't talked to Chuck in a while.
Chuck, audio check. And he might have been able to just connect. Had to go and run and do something and running back to the computer as we're talking about him.
That happens.
And so I know Bulky wasn't feeling well and he wasn't sure he was going to be able to make it.
That's okay. I'm sorry about that. Haven't talked to him in a while either.
Yeah. Yeah, and he moved. His house in Dallas was awesome. Or in Texas. I guess it was Dallas.
Where is he now?
Oklahoma.
Oh, yeah. He said he was moving north. Yeah. I have some cousins in Oklahoma. It's not actually a bad state.
Chuck, you appear to be here.
Everything seems to be working. I always have to deal with Apple hating everybody else. And then, I have to fight through the cult to get
That's
on.
Right. Well, for some reason, getting on Zoom
I'm having
today.
the same issue.
Oh, getting on Zoom today, I had to log in a couple different times and it was just silly. Stupid Zoom. That's why we can't have anything nice. What is that? Man Stopper Mania? Man Hater Mania? What?
No, it's a collection of talking about this subject.
Oh, interesting.
Stopping power of British firearms in Victorian warfare. One of the things that how for decades I've listened to people say well, if you don't carry this, you're going to get killed in the street, or don't carry a 9mm, carry a 45, or early in my career when everybody carried revolvers, it was don't carry one of them jam-o-matics. You got to carry a wheel gun because you get
Right.
6 for sure. Well, funny thing about this book is the people in this Victorian era, like British colonization type stuff, like fighting the dervishes and stuff like that. You know what they say? Yeah, 45s and 4.55s lack stopping power, and revolvers are unreliable and can't be trusted.
Get yourself a Mauser.
Now, the handgun you need to carry is a Howdaw pistol in 5.77 or bigger.
So how is their shot placement during these interactions?
Immaterial.
I will say that the British medical records show that the Martini Henry was a much greater wounder than the 303 was.
Well, with that early round nose full metal jacket bullet, it was bound to be, because that was just ice picking people. Same thing with I've seen the write-ups out of the Philippine insurrection and all the guys that advocate for the 45 because the 38 was a failure. Well, the 45s didn't do any better, really. The 30-40 Krag really didn't do well at all for the same reason the early 303 did. What was reliable was 12-gauge buckshot at very close range.
Yep. It's like anything in life. The more tissue you crush, the more likely you are to win something important.
So that's, I guess, why we all need to carry 5.77 Howdaw pistols.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, that's why my 4.55 Webley is up on the wall. I don't carry that on duty.
No. Says right here the 4.55 is unreliable.
Exactly.
And
that's why it's up there. I don't carry it for duty. Well, should we start? And there's one specific topic that Gary is especially enthusiastic about that I'm very excited to discuss, and it's what Hearn brought up, and it was the loss of institutional knowledge. So that's going to be a cool discussion. So what I have is basically the basics of terminal ballistics with handguns. With sub and duty caliber pistols, what do bullets do to flesh and people? Overview of wad cutters, fluted solids, all these screwdriver rounds, all those other and I got a wonderful text from Gary explaining. I'm saying it like you're not here. The external hollow point is that just a silly term, and it doesn't make any sense. But those types of things, discussing that, talking about what temp cavity actually is doing as far as the overall incapacitation or wounding in handguns in people. Fast and light for caliber, which I know that's near and dear to Chuck Haggard's heart. Loss of institutional knowledge. And if we really want to upset people, clear gel versus calibrated ordnance gel. And I'm sure we'll come up with some more stuff as we proceed. So if you guys are ready, I will start it up. We're already started, but I'll start with the intros and we'll get going. Any additional topics you guys can think of that you might want to discuss that I can add to the list to just make sure that we don't miss it?
A lot of what is sold to people is by charlatans trying to steal your money for, it's the magic bean effect. You were talking about the external hollow point people is like the G9 bullet or whatever.
Yeah.
I saw some of their guys at a trade show, TriggerCon down in Wichita. And as I walked by, one of their table dudes was telling people how they are better than hollow points because if you get a torso hit, it liquefies everything in the chest cavity. He literally used the term liquefy. Nor is, I don't know how you have a hollow point that isn't hollow. It's a fluted bullet.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe they're trying to get their bullet banned in New Jersey. I have no idea. But
that's a good point.
It's just, Yeah, it's some of the claims they make is like claiming the Earth is flat. It's just
physically impossible.
Yeah,
we're not shooting rail guns yet.
Even if we were, wouldn't necessarily cause some tremendous damage.
Everything was liquefied, though.
I mean, we shot live animals at Letterman with rounds in excess of 6,000 feet per second.
Oh.
Ain't nothing anybody's carrying on the street. Ain't nothing anybody's using is going at that velocity. Yet we shot 300-pound hogs with projectiles at in excess of 6,000 feet per second. And guess what? They just stood there.
What kind of design of projectile was that?
A variety of different things. Basically, we necked down. We had a 50 BMG action that we would neck down and put different projectiles into with different test barrels.
Wow, that sounds awesome.
So, a lot of conventional bullets would disintegrate before it left the barrel.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Dr. Fackler machined a whole bunch of projectiles out of solid materials. We had some other specialized things to see what would happen because everyone's screaming about velocity. Yeah. Oh my gosh, high velocity. Well, 6,300 feet per second, it's higher than pretty much anything you can buy. And it just doesn't matter. What matters is what does the projectile do in the body? What tissue does it impact? And that's kind of what's important, not how fast the projectile is going. As I showed you recently, I showed you an example of a projectile at 3,300 feet per second, one around 2,800 and one below 2,000. And the one that made the biggest hole was the slow, large projectile because of the greater mass.
Yeah.
So it had.
Yeah, that goes right back to what you were saying about the slugs.
It had the largest permanent and the largest temporary cavity and the most penetration depth, and yet it was the slowest. Yeah. So it's not the velocity that matters. What does it do in the body? What does it hit?
The idea of necking down to 50 reminds me.
222.
Well, remember when
we did that actually.
When everybody was wildcatting various things, like necking down the Weatherby rounds and things like that. And some of the wildcats were all the rage. A buddy of mine, and I've heard other people use it, but he said he was going to invent one and call it the Schnellgeschiesen Laudenboomer.
I like it.
So the fast shooting,
loud,
yeah. Nice.
It was basically something to convert gunpowder into velocity and muzzle blast. There was no point to it.
I mean, there was something to be said for having a hand-operated flashbang.
357.
Those 50% of people roughly that have their actions stopped because they choose to stop, that may play a factor.
Yeah. Matter of fact, I just took an officer through qual, and before we did it, we talked about, okay, here are three main ways I can't talk, how to stop a bad guy with gunfire, psychological stop being one that's completely out of our control. And then we talked about shot placement and all that. And I told him, okay, as you're shooting, we have a full silhouette, but please, if you see your shots go off somewhere you don't want them, fix that right away. But we were talking about, psychological stops. It's completely out of our control, but when it works, that's awesome.
That's a discussion Bulky and I had on when the 125 grain 357 Magnum was so popular and was supposed to be legendary for stopping power, that we were both of the opinion that part of the effect was you got a beach ball size muzzle flash and it's really loud at close range, and particularly out of like 4-inch guns, 3-inch guns, things like that. It had a distinct psychological effect on people.
I know a couple incidents where officers fired shorter barreled 357 Magnums with 125 grain loads, and the gun went off and the bad guy dropped their gun or ceased their action. And when the paramedics got there, the guy's standing there kind of stunned and there's no bullet wound. Yet we had to stop.
Hair was singed, but
Yes. Actually, there were burning powder granules on the shirt. Yes.
That's awesome.
So that happens, and one can't quantify that.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, I'm adding that to the list. Magic 357. Because I know Daryl said that he was writing something specifically about that and the psychological effect regarding especially older 357 that didn't have flash suppressant in it.
Yes, that is absolutely accurate. Right before the California Highway Patrol switched from 357 Magnum to 40 Smith & Wesson, the load on the state contract was, I think, a Remington 125. And that load had incredible muzzle blast and flash. Yet when you looked at the autopsy results and the shooting incident results, the load had very poor performance in terms of penetration depth, intermediate barrier capability depth compared to the 180-40s they went to next. So that intangible effect may have played a result, but from the physical factors, the actual wound in the body, the actual ability to penetrate barriers, the 125, 357 Magnum paled in comparison to the 180-40 shootings. And this is back when CHP was being very careful to gather a lot of data. Ed Finsel, who was the firearms chief, was doing an amazing job gathering data. And, because they were looking at this big switch and then they made it, they had to justify it. And they did some really good scientific stuff, very similar to Gene Woolberg was doing down in San Diego. And so we had a lot, maybe 76 shootings or so, where they had really good data on it. And we're able to compare back and forth between the two. And there was just no question the 180-40 did better.
Interesting. Well, let's start her up. Already, I can tell you a lot of what we've discussed, this is going to be part of the final product because this is just great information. I just love it. And unfortunately, there's that, and we'll talk about that. But there's not enough of this going on unless I'm talking to Haggard, Bulky, and some of the older guys.
Well, let's talk about that a bit because all this information has been known since the late 80s, early 90s.
Yeah.
It was widely promulgated by the FBI workshops, by the IWBA, by the Letterman Army Institute of Research. And that was all well known until we're going into the 2000s. We have 9/11 happen. And suddenly everybody goes and deploys.
Yeah.
And so the pace of deployment is incredibly quick, and people are focused on the extremely important logistics, tactics, et cetera, and are getting burdened by these multiple back-to-back deployments. And so there's not a lot of folks studying, researching, or keeping up on data.
Yeah.
There's a boatload of research being done based on what was happening. Much of it was good, but a lot of it was just complete repetitive waste.
Gotcha.
Millions and millions, if not hundreds of millions of dollars poured down a sinkhole of stupidity.
Mm-hmm.
Like, let's airburst a grenade over our enemy's head. When we're going against a pier, they're going to be wearing helmets and body armor. And let's put this little small 25 millimeter airburst above.
Yep.
When 40 millimeters are already barely adequate. So let's
XM25.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So there was lots of things like that. Caseless lightweight machine guns. There was tons of stuff that just didn't pan out, right? Or has been stuck in limbo for 25 years.
Yeah.
Anyway, all these guys that are deploying, all these young troopers that come in, young Marines that come in and say 2001, 2003, 2005, and then they deploy for the next 20 years.
Yeah.
Pretty much, right? And I know their units had really, really, really good data on 9/11 because we provided a bunch of it. In fact, I was at Fifth Group extensively, and I was in contact with some of the other folks. I know Coronado had it. I know lots of data was available. And then, 15, 20 years later, I start getting phone calls from force modernization folks saying, hey, we need such and such. I go, well, you guys already have that. Like, what do you mean? I go, we left all that information for you back in 2003, back in 2005. And they're just completely, oh, it's not here. Never heard of it. And I think the problem is so much of the information got classified after 9/11 or restricted. That's one thing. And it's so much easier to go to the internet and download some dude that's shooting in his backyard, shooting 1 to 5 shots, it improperly fabricated tissue simulant and go, oh, yeah, that's the answer right there.
Yep.
And so we have this institutional loss of knowledge. We have folks relying on unvetted material when all they have to do is pick up the phone and call the FBI, BRF. Any law enforcement agency, any military unit can get real data, and yet they choose not to for some reason.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's a reason why SOCOM goes to the FBI for testing and not other folks.
YouTube?
Well, certainly not YouTube, but certainly not some of the other parts within the government system.
Yeah.
Okay. They've got the best testing in the nation, probably in the world. Why aren't agencies and units relying on that? And that's pretty strange in 2024, approaching 2025.
Where everything's connected. It takes nothing to reach out.
Nope.
Yeah.
And, any agency can get it. Any unit can get it. And yet they're flailing around making really dumb decisions.
Yeah. Well, I've heard a couple of reports of some local law enforcement agencies, not local here, but I just mean as opposed to state or otherwise, but some local agencies picking up some of this fluted solid stuff versus a gold dot or an HST. It baffles me, but.
So we tested fluted handgun ammunition back in the late 80s, early 90s for what became the Mark 23 program.
Mm-hmm.
The stuff is not new.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily bad.
No.
But it's not new. And it's certainly not magic. You have a solid projectile with more surface area, and usually they make the projectiles lighter weight. So you have more surface area, you have less weight, so it's going to penetrate less than a standard FMJ.
Yep.
Okay, great.
So works great in an area where you can't carry a full metal jacket. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Or not full metal jacket, hollow points.
Yeah, it works better possibly than a full metal jacket if you need to have optimal penetration depth, and they've got that dialed in. Basically, every handgun in a duty caliber is poking a hole in tissue.
Yep.
It's not liquefying it. It's not exploding it. It's not creating neural shock, hydrostatic shock, or it's poking a hole.
Yeah.
If you have a projectile with a larger diameter, you're going to poke a bigger hole. If you have more surface area, you're going to have more drag. So the projectile is going to penetrate a little less. If you have a really smooth projectile, it's going to penetrate a little bit more with a little less tissue damage. If you have a wad cutter with a sharp leading edge, you're going to poke a more cookie cutter type hole.
Versus a rounded nose.
Versus a rounded
pushes
nose,
through.
Push through and push tissue to the side without causing a cut.
Yeah.
That is severe.
That is truly poking a hole.
Yeah. Then none of this is rocket science, folks, right?
Yeah.
This is basic physiology and anatomy.
And it's so disappointing because if you stop and think about it, everything you said makes complete sense, but also you can back this all up. Yet we have people that they have the wool pulled over their eyes with all this advertising and all these magic bullets and magic beans. And I don't know, Chuck, if you're still dealing with people like that, but on occasion I do, and it's just so tiresome. It's so tiresome.
Constantly on the internet, quite a bit in the civilian world, and then even in the police world, we have a local agency, small agency here in Kansas that bought off on the Fort Scott munitions. It's a solid copper bullet. It's a solid copper bullet. It's designed to tumble upon impact, TUI bullets.
Yep.
And they're selling them as better than jacketed hollow points. And one of the things they run around telling people is, well, the military uses bullets that tumble, so that's how you know they're better. Completely ignoring that bullets that yaw That's just happens to be an artifact of physics when you use a Spitzer bullet. It's not because it was a design feature that they went after. And it's just a happy accident that things like M193 ball will yaw and then typically fragment to really do a lot of good for us. Well, they were using it because they want to abide by the Hague Accords and laws of land warfare, not because it was better than jagged hollow points or anything like that. So what they're selling people is very, very high priced ball ammunition. You can get, there's quite a few loads out there. 115 grain spear lawman I've seen in ballistic gel very reliably yaws. So the people, there's a lot of charlatans out there. The light for caliber, fast fragmenting bullets, the magic fluted bullets that are supposedly, they're not necessarily bad bullets, but the advertising them as better than jacket hollow points is a lie. Bullets that tumble versus bullets that expand and things like that. And all of this there's magic bullets that are supposed to be better than what we've already got going on, is all an attempt to make a buck. Now, the fluted bullets, I think, and Gary can correct me if I'm wrong, I think they're kind of they're a pseudo version of a modern semi-wad cutter. They can be useful in certain calibers like 380, where expanding bullets, my analogy would be if your Elmer Keith. So he went with heavy hard cast lead semi-wad cutters. Why? Because he wanted a wide flat meplat that cut, and he wanted the bullet to penetrate a lot. And he wanted this because he dealt with big animals, elk, bear, moose, things like that. So if we take that idea of that flat nose, a cutting meplat, and a bullet that penetrates, if we shrink the target, then we shrink the bullet. So now instead of bears or elk with a 45 or 44, we're using 380 as a defensive round. Well, those attributes you want out of that bullet that Keith was looking for still apply. They still apply. So if I had a defensive 380, I got a little bullet shooting at a big target, maybe a big aggressive man. That would be analogous to shooting at a large, a black bear or grizzly bear or something with a 44, 45. I would want those same attributes, that cutting meplat and sufficient penetration to get the job done. So in that regard, like in a 380, things like that, it makes a lot of sense. That's why a lot of us advocate wad cutters in like 32 H&R mag, 38 special and snub noses, that sort of thing. So the bullets aren't necessarily bad, but they're hyped, and there's a lot of false advertising. The bullets that are bad are, things that are high priced full metal jacket that is sold as being better than everything else, or the light for caliber, really uber fast fragmenting bullets that have very, very limited penetration. Those are horrible. We have documented cases of bullets like that getting good people hurt.
Correct. That would be the worst option.
I've witnessed firsthand what was it, a Lehigh extreme penetrator will do to a human skull, and then 5 additional walls on the other side of that skull. Nice clean holes. It killed the guy, but it also practically was in the neighbor's house.
But then any solid bullet will do that.
Yeah.
And any hollow point that plugs will do that.
Yeah.
There's a reason why 5.56 tends to work better for indoor shooting than anything else. Certainly better than a handgun.
Yeah. Fragmentation, deflection,
lightweight, easily upset.
Ooh, upset. I like that.
That's the technical term. The bullet upsets in tissue.
That's cool.
Or it doesn't. If it doesn't, it goes straight through. If it does upset, it yaws. It may deform. It may yaw, hyperexpand, and then fragment. For a bullet to fragment, it flattens, which means it hyperexpands. Okay. And when it hyperexpands and defeats the tensile strength of the construction, it will then shatter.
You need to be on more. I like this.
It ain't magic.
No, but it's not discussed enough, unfortunately.
Problem was it was discussed ad nauseum to the point where Dr. Fackler decided no more discussion was needed to shut down IWPA because everything was answered.
Yeah.
Then we have whole new generations of people that are unwilling to read historical documents, unwilling to read what came before because all these questions are answered. Let's go to better questions.
Yeah.
But nobody wants to do that.
Yeah.
I mean, why did we repeat many of the mistakes of Vietnam and Afghanistan when we already knew the answers? Why did it seem like nobody had read Colonel Rothstein's book about unconventional warfare in Afghanistan at an administrative and political level when that book you could buy it on Amazon? Mm-hmm. I mean, all of this stuff's out there. You just have to educate yourself.
We have to relive history.
Yeah. And again, if you don't want to do that, just call the FBI up and order the frickin' disc. If you're an agency or a unit.
So that because I had, and I know also Doc is not a big fan of clear gel, but I find it useful for certain things. And one of them is explaining things. Recently I did, when I do my small guns classes, I'll show them an example of what I'm looking for when I'm looking for good handgun ammo. Why is the FBI criteria for 12 to 18 inches, et cetera, et cetera? Why is that valid? What am I looking for? And I'll shoot bullets like 124 grain HST comes out, and that beautiful, that's what we want the bullet to do. And in the 16-inch clear gel, all the way through the block, even out of this is out of a Glock 43, works great. So somebody had some of the Liberty ammo, asked me to shoot it. I explained why it was garbage, and all of the little nose pedals broke off and stopped in about 2-3 inches in a flower pattern. And this is what's left. That's what's left. So left is as small as, so I'm hiding that base behind a single pellet out of a flight control shell that I recovered from a ballistic gel. So what we have is the less mass and similar diameter to a single double-up buck pellet out of a flight control shell. So somebody's going to tell me that the wounding potential of that, that's, they'll tell you their bullet's magic and it does this magic stuff. And it's just utter and complete bullshit. It's complete charlatans selling this crap.
Lamas.
Yeah. Yes.
Lamas. Go read your history, folks.
Yeah.
And before that, Glazer Safety Slug and MagSafe and everything else that came before. Triton Quick Shock. I mean, there's a bazillion of these things. Nothing new, folks.
There's every time I see one of the light for caliber fragmenting high velocity rounds, I'm like, people act like the Glazer, the MagSafe, and all this other stuff hasn't already been tried, hasn't already existed. And I've seen 2 shootings on the street with Glazers, and they were underwhelming. They were just completely underwhelming. Really kind of minimal tissue damage. One of them was an armed robbery suspect that got shot in the shoulder, and we tracked the guy down 3 weeks later, and it had hit him in the shoulder at an angle towards the chest cavity. Didn't get past the deltoid muscles, and somebody in the hood was a combat medic and had patched him up, and he just walked it off, never even went to the hospital, because that's how you get caught. When you show up to the ER with a bullet wound, they got to call the cops. He never even went to the ER because the bullet hit him in the shoulder, fragmented, and just came to rest. One of the other shootings that I saw, a bullet didn't even fragment. So now it's lightweight round nose ball ammo. That's really underwhelming. The only one I saw where it did work, the first round stopped dead in the guy's forehead. And then the liquor store clerk that shot the guy again lucked out, and the bullet went right through the jugular notch and just happened to hit him in between. The bullet actually didn't expand or fragment or upset, and it hit as a solid mass into the vertebrae, in between two vertebrae, and that dropped the guy. But the only reason that one worked real well was because it didn't do what it was designed to do, if that makes sense. But yeah, glazers, all of this, the RIP bullets, they're all garbage.
Yeah, but it's given the doctors so much more work, and they hate that because they have to remove all the pedals.
No, not necessarily.
Well, these are the excuses I hear why it's such an effective silliness. Yeah. Though you got to consider, we are dealing with some of the lowest common denominators when it comes to this kind of stuff and their knowledge. So,
police administrators, is that what we're talking about?
No, not quite. Close.
Oh,
just one step below that.
Sergeants. Okay.
Well, I guess I better do an official intro. Just because it's important, and because Fred needs to talk too, even though he's just enjoying this. Okay, well, here we go. But yeah, I'm going to keep everything that we've talked about before because it's just great. I'm very much enjoying it. Hey everyone, Matt Landfair here with Primary and Secondary. Welcome to ModCast. Today's episode number is number 400. We have done 400 of these. It's hard to believe. Today's date is September 2nd, 2024. The topic, DocGKR returns. We have Dr. Gary Roberts, Mr. Ballistics. I don't know, banned from websites that don't like to hear the truth, though I understand that's probably going to change very soon. He was on with us multiple years ago. That episode was absolutely fantastic. People still refer to it. They listen to it. Some officers tell me that they have it as required listening for some of their newbie officers to have a better understanding of what bullets are doing. So I figured, why don't we talk more about sub and duty caliber pistol terminal ballistics? Because we do have a lot of listeners that are carrying every day. They aren't necessarily military or law enforcement. Definitely on the military or on the law enforcement side, I'm carrying a handgun every day. When I'm off duty, I'm carrying a handgun. Why don't we talk about these things that affect most of us and have a better understanding of what's out there and how all this works, and also what to avoid? Now, we did start about 40 minutes-ish ago. Already have had some wonderful conversation. You've already listened to most of that I'm thinking about how I'm editing this right now. But fantastic information so far. So my background's in law enforcement, been doing the cop thing since last century. This kind of information I absolutely love, because getting into law enforcement, not having any clue about any of this stuff, and I just have to take people's word for it. It was confusing. And when people would talk about some of this stuff, not understanding what the concepts were, what the terminology was, or what's actually happening. And as I delved further and further and started to learn from good sources like Dr. Roberts, Chuck Haggard, Chuck Pressburg, Eric, the list continues. Sherman House has been fun. Buford Boone. I know I'm forgetting people, but even Jared Reston with his shoot and discussing how bullets performed on an aggressive person. Interesting stuff that normally I wouldn't be able to hear. And it's absolutely wonderful that I can present this kind of information to people that are interested in learning more about it. You may have heard of DocGKR. He's referenced frequently. He has the list of these are the go-to rounds on like ARFCOM and other places share this. Extensive experience. Studied under Dr. Martin Fackler. One of the things I like to tell people when we start talking about this kind of stuff is, go study the stuff that Fackler already produced And bear that in mind during these discussions, because this is basically the foundation of everything that that we're going to learn from here. And so for me, reading through a lot of this has been absolutely enlightening. And then to have Gary come on and help translate stuff. And I don't remember what they were exactly, but I remember several concepts weren't quite landing for me. And just some plain speak I was able to understand it so much more. And I appreciate these opportunities to have these types of discussions. So I'm going to stop talking. I'm going to have these guys give some brief backgrounds. Before we go there, I'm going to say my favorite thing. Make sure you support those sources that you have found to be beneficial. If these guys bring up any organizations or their own personal websites or anything like that, pay attention. Give them some likes, some subscriptions, some shares, because it's beneficial. Those algorithms out there on Instagram, on Facebook, on YouTube, on a lot of these resources that we use are not working in our favor. So you as the listener get to help us by being the algorithm and sharing where we normally wouldn't be shared. So backgrounds and plug whatever the hell you feel like. Fred, surprise guest Fred.
Hey, Fred Lucas, Scarlet Fire Bushcraft is my new thing, closing out a career in the Army, and then an NSWC Crane, and some time with a couple of different bureaus in the State Department. So I don't know why I'm here. I'm really here to listen.
I can tell you exactly why you're here, because you log in to listen sometimes, and I know, oh, Fred's going to have something to say about this, or Fred has some experience about this, and whether you have stuff to comment on or add or just to listen, it's always just great to have you.
Well, thanks.
Yeah.
Let's also acknowledge that Fred was instrumental in breaking up one of the largest frauds in ammunition history.
That is true.
If it hadn't been for Fred, probably wouldn't have got to the truth as fast as we did.
Those were fun times.
Yes, sir.
Awesome. Chuck?
Chuck Haggard. Pertinent to this, I'm in my 37th year of law enforcement. Lifetime shooter, hunter. I'm a nerd. I'm a big science nerd. I'm involved in, and I've been studying this sort of thing since I was a teenager. Of course, back then when people were shooting wet newspapers and duck seal and clay and things like that, the information was mostly bullshit. I got into law enforcement very shortly after the FBI Miami gunfight. There was a lot of stuff that came out immediately after that about bulletin performance and things like that. And then later we know that there was at least two big get-togethers that the FBI had on talking about wound ballistics, and eventually they stood up the ballistic research unit, the BRU, and we started getting really great information out of those guys. I was early on, as soon as I found out about the International Wound Ballistics Association, I became a member of that and was getting the paper journals mailed when they were doing that. Took great interest in that. Have managed to hang on to most of those over the years, even though some of them were loaned to friends and then disappeared. But have continued to study this throughout my career. Been involved in responding to a lot of shootings on the street, homicides. A lot of the shootings we went to were not homicides, because particularly with handguns, most people tend to survive that. I think the statistic is still something like 8 or 9 out of 10 people shot with a handgun survive the experience. But looking at injury patterns and things like that, and being a nerd and being at the crime scene and seeing what kind of bullets do what kind of calibers do what, was something I always took great interest in. I was blessed early on to have access to like the IWBA, but also like our local coroner, Doc Mitchell, would let me like sit in on autopsies if I wanted to, or he would let me know when he had something he said was interesting and let me look through pictures and things like that after the postmortem. And we would talk about bullet performance and what he was seeing, that sort of thing. So got a little bit more, well, quite a bit more access to that sort of thing than average cops get to. And I was also a member of our shooting review board and eventually the supervisor and the co-chair with the deputy chief of that. So I was involved in quite a few officer-involved shooting investigations, be they fatal or not fatal. So got to see the aftermath of those, whatever information we had on those. And I've always, part of this has always been self-serving in that I liked to be able to carry the best ammunition I could get my hands on. And that wasn't always the case when I was a cop or previously when I was in the military. If I'd have gone to war with my unit in the proverbial World War III folded gap scenario, I'd have been carrying an M16A1 and M193 ammo. So if I have to use what they give me, I wanted to understand what it could do and what it couldn't do. So the study of this has been something I've done for a very, very long time in a variety of venues.
Cool. And last but not least, and who knows, someone might also jump in. DocGKR.
Yeah, so I'm just a dentist.
You're just a dentist.
Just a dentist. And I've been doing that for 40 years. I did my residency at Navy Hospital, Oakland, at a time when Dr. Fackler was running the Letterman Army Institute of Research right across the bay. And when I finished my residency, I asked our commanders if I could go over there and chat with my Army colleagues, because we would see a number of gunshot wounds in Oakland, particularly at Highland Hospital, the local trauma center. And what I was reading in the medical literature was not matching what we were seeing in the emergency room or when talking to the police officers who would bring the patients in. So there was this large gap, and the one name in the literature that made sense was all these studies coming out of Letterman. So I went over there with my commander's blessing and talked to Dr. Fackler. He gave me a stack of literature about a foot thick and said, go read this. So I did. Unfortunately, Dr. Fackler had been a Navy surgeon in Vietnam and switched over to the Army, and his wife was a Navy Nurse Corps admiral. And so he was the Navy guy coming and chatting with him. And so after I read that, then we started doing some research together. Did a couple papers in the IWBA. I used to hang out in his lab all the time, and I became one of 3 officers that Dr. Fackler had trained before Letterman was shut down and Dr. Fackler retired from the Army. Myself, Paul Doherty, and John Uhorchak. Now, some of you may have seen that Black Rifle Coffee Company video called The Truth About Black Hawk Down, where they're talking about Sergeant Major Brad Holling's experience in Mogadishu during Gothic Serpent. And there's a part in the video where he reunites with a surgeon who operated on his leg after he was severely wounded. And that surgeon was John Uhorchak, who was trained by Fackler. So Dr. Uhorchak had a lot of experience with wound ballistics, goes to Mogadishu, and out of Mogadishu came a whole new paradigm in trauma care that the military had not done up to that point. Pretty much everything we were doing was wrong in terms of trying to stop bleeding. And so out of that incident came hypovolemic resuscitation, tourniquets, a push toward anticoagulants like quick clot gauze and things. And Dr. Uhorchak was on the forefront of that. So if you haven't watched that video, it's definitely worth doing.
Oh, that's very cool.
In addition, Lucky Gunner just did a video on the FBI 10mm saga, and there's a couple very short video clips of Dr. Fackler in the lab at Letterman, which are kind of nostalgic and fun to see, if everybody wants to see where all that came from. I was fortunate to have had a number of opportunities to do ballistics research, both in law enforcement and in the military. Unfortunately, almost all the data that's come out of wound ballistics since 9/11 has been classified or restricted. Mm-hmm. And so all of that open source data that was coming out of Letterman, coming out of the IWBA has stopped. And you can't have that kind of information available to the general public or individual law enforcement agents, officers or military personnel. You would have to get it at a unit level or at an agency level. And that takes it very easy to do, but you actually have to do it.
Yeah.
If you are sitting around at home and you look it up on the internet, 90+% of what's on there is flawed and inaccurate. And in fact, just about every field that I'm a expert witness on, the information is inaccurate. So I would be highly skeptical of anything I see on the internet, sadly. And yet that's where people go for their research.
Yeah. Well, so, these 5 websites say the same thing. So clearly that's the truth.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nope. Muted, Chuck.
Anyway, so, as we were talking about a bit ago, we have more information than we've ever had at our fingertips.
Yeah.
The problem now is sorting out the good stuff from the plethora of balderdash.
Yeah.
And marketing claims and just pure inaccuracy. The synthetic gels are useless. Sorry, useless. If you're going to do a test, do it right. We know the correlation between properly fabricated and validated ordnance gel. We know how that works. The synthetic gel doesn't have that same correlation with living tissue. So why use it? Yeah, it's easier. Well, a lot of things are easier. It doesn't make it right. So the other thing I see is so many of the YouTube videos do one shot or a couple shots. Well, that's not statistically significant. Sorry. If you're an officer, get your agency to call the FBI and order the disc.
Yeah.
If you're a military unit, get your command, call the FBI and get the disc. There's no reason to be ignorant when the data is readily available.
Yeah.
General public, you're going to have to work harder. But those IWBA journals are no longer copyrighted. They're out there everywhere. The papers from Letterman are out there everywhere. This stuff is not secret.
Yeah.
Up until about 9/11.
But it takes some effort.
It does. You have to spend a few minutes downloading stuff.
Yeah. And then actually have to read.
Yeah. Yep.
So what you're saying is I could make $1 million if I get some of these documents and just read them. So then people can listen. And now I just gave someone $1 million idea. Dang it. I shouldn't have said that out loud.
Probably not, because there's idiots like me that just give this stuff away for free.
Yeah. Yeah.
So Doc's bit on that is something leads me into something that I see a lot on the internet is you have idiots saying things like, well, I've never been attacked by Jello.
Yes.
That's the thing.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of people that think that ballistic gel was invented by some nerd in a lab or the FBI. Then the FBI doesn't exactly, in many circles, have the best reputation nowadays. Disregarding the fact that the ballistic research unit has nothing to do with any of that. But one of the things I thought I'd ask Doc to talk about is how we didn't just invent Jello and start using 10% ordnance gelatin, that there was a process to prove that a lot of people don't know of and involved like surgeon input, autopsies, live tissue labs with anesthetized pigs, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I was hoping Doc could speak to the history of how we certified that what bullets do in ballistic gel is what bullets do in muscle tissue.
So, World War II, 50s, 60s, et cetera, there was a NATO standard after World War II using 20% ordnance gel, and it was designed by engineers. And that was great and all. Now, Dr. Fackler's a Navy trauma surgeon in Vietnam, treating lots of real-world penetrating trauma. And he transfers from the Navy to the Army, and he's still continuing his surgical career in the 70s. And in the 80s, he's in 06 now, and he's seeing this great disparity in the medical literature compared to what he actually experienced operating on Marines and soldiers with real penetrating trauma, gunshot wounds, fragments, et cetera. And he goes, hey, there's something wrong here. These engineers are using this one data set, and it's not matching with what we're seeing. And there's all these other things, as Chuck was alluding to, shooting wet newspapers and duck seal and clay and a bunch of other useless stuff. So Dr. Fackler sets out, when he starts this wound ballistics research lab at the Letterman Army Institute of Research in San Francisco at the Presidio, he decides he's going to figure out what is the ideal material so you don't have to keep shooting live animals. So they take a bunch of simulants and they start testing different things. And they shoot some large 200 to 300 pound hogs that are anesthetized and try to make a correlation between the two. And they also start challenging some of the paradigms that, for example, high velocity wounds need to be treated differently than lower velocity wounds. So in the process of all this, the tissue simulant that most accurately represented living tissue was 10% ordnance gelatin, not 20%. And at a refrigerator temperature, whereas the 20% gelatin was at a slightly warmer temperature, which was harder to maintain. So you have an easily fabricated 10% gel that you can store in a regular refrigerator that almost exactly matches living muscle tissue. In addition, in shooting these large animals, when you did the traditional surgery of the time with wide-scale debridement of tissue if it's a high-velocity wound, and not doing that if it's a low-velocity wound, as if the surgeon knows the velocity, the animals that got the traditional debridement of a high-velocity wound couldn't walk afterwards because they had lost so much tissue. Whereas if you took the wound and did nothing, maybe put the animal on antibiotics, even if it was a 3,500 foot per second wound, the animal could walk fine after it healed. So the surgery in many times was actually causing more morbidity than the gunshot wound did, depending on what the projectile did in tissue and what it hit, right? And so we learned that you treat the wound, not the weapon. The velocity was pretty irrelevant. What the projectile did in the body, what tissue did it touch, how did it disrupt that tissue, what anatomic structures were injured. That is what you treat based on your clinical exam and imaging studies. You're not treating the velocity. You're not treating if it's a rifle or assault rifle or handgun or submachine gun. That's all irrelevant. What matters is, what did the projectile do? We did tests with projectiles in excess of 6,000 feet per second on living tissue. And if the projectile did not upset in tissue, the animal got a Band-Aid and a Band-Aid and it was fine in a few days. Now, 6,000, 6,300, 6,500 feet per second is dramatically faster than any rifle we're using in the real world, be it military, hunting, civilian, whatever. Yet those animals were not terribly disrupted. Their insides were not liquefied. They didn't have hydrostatic shock. They didn't have any of these catchwords that are bandied about by ammunition companies. So we know that that is plain prevarication when these companies talk about this stuff. And as a result, we fall back on our science, our anatomy, our physiology. And again, what does the projectile do in the body?
Yeah.
Now, if I have a bullet going 6,000 feet per second, it disintegrates on impact and doesn't get, say it hits the back of my arm, it doesn't get past my humerus. Well, not much is going to happen. What if I'm shot with a 45-70 going 1,500 feet per second and it completely obliterates a 6-inch section of my humerus and comes out the other side, taking a large teacup size volume of tissue out with it? Well, my arm ain't going to work.
Yeah.
So the velocity is less important again than what it does and what's injured. And that's really what matters. And when we're talking handguns are just poking little holes in tissue. Hole, 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 and you hope you hit something important.
Yeah. Now, when you say hit something important,
yes.
what are obviously heart, obviously CNS?
Well, hold on. CNS is what's going to cause potentially immediate cessation of the person's illegal and hostile activities that are endangering innocent bystanders and other folks.
Yeah.
You shoot someone in the heart, okay, now we're talking a variable time frame.
They're on a timer.
Maybe minutes before a person reduces their blood pressure to a point that they go into hypovolemic shock and fall unconscious and unable to continue to be violent. So where we're going to shoot, if we want immediate incapacitation, is the upper spinal cord and brain. If we want delayed incapacitation, we're going to shoot center of mass into the heart and great blood vessels. Well, let's shoot them in the pelvis. Okay, well, if I don't have another target, sure. And the person may die from sepsis in a few days or weeks.
Eventually, yeah.
But they're not necessarily going to be incapacitated. Now, with a rifle, if we break a femoral head, but that's not even set to center of mass, that's more off to a side.
Yeah.
Okay, fine. Now, I mean, we've all seen deer and other animals that get shot with a shoulder shot and they immediately fall down. Well, in that particular case, we're using a rifle round typically, and we may be creating enough rapid stretch that the spinal cord is bruised or potentially even broken, and the animal is unable to move anymore and collapses immediately and then dies from exsanguination. Okay, that's a whole different ballgame.
Yeah.
Right? We have a mechanical trauma with the force of the stretch cavity literally disrupting the spinal column. Okay. That's a lot different than some invisible shock wave going through the animal. That's a totally different
magical
thing. Yeah, that's not what we're talking about. So temporary stretch is a thing. It's where the bullet goes through, the bullet is crushing tissue directly through the wound. That's the permanent cavity. Then there's an area of stretch that expands and then immediately elastically recoils. The better the tissue is at tolerating stretch, the better it is going to withstand that stretch. Mm-hmm. Certain tissue doesn't handle stretch well, particularly things like the brain and the nerves. Other tissue like your bowel, if it's empty, your blood vessels, things like that, your bladder, if it's empty, your intestines, if it's empty, they can stretch a lot. Think about sausage, right? Think about haggis. Disgusting, but think about it nonetheless. So organs that can stretch a lot will tolerate that stretch to a greater degree than an organ that can't tolerate that stretch, like your brain. So that is, when we're talking stretch, it's really, really important that we talk about what's getting stretched.
Yeah.
Right? And two organs, you might have an empty bladder and a full bladder. You put the projectile next to the empty bladder, it's like an empty balloon. It stretches, it's no problem. You have a really, really full bladder or intestine or stomach, whatever, and you stretch that, it pops. Water balloon that's full, right? So there's variability in all these things. You might have a young individual with really good collagen who stretches magically. You might have an older person whose collagen is weakened and it doesn't have the same elasticity, and they're maybe much less tolerant of a stretch injury. Yeah. So there's a lot of physiology and anatomy, and this is what's wrong with the computer man simulations, is those computer man simulations don't truly take into account the variability of the human body. And when the engineers rely on these calculations, that's what leads to a lot of inaccuracy.
So, Matt, I got a couple of things that, as far as like leading questions, things
awesome.
that Doc are talking about that have to do with temp cavity, because it seems like a lot of the BS that comes out of buy our magic bullet has to do with, look how magic our temp cavity is. One is, I was hoping that Doc could talk about, people think that there's magic, like all the 5.7 fanboys think this little bitty bullet breaks 2,000 feet per second, so now it has rifle-like effects. And I know that himself and Dr. Fackler looked at some of the historical, like the old school bullets, 5.77 Snyder and, 4570s and things like that, versus some of these, like modern things that are higher velocity, 5.7, 12 gauge slugs. So my understanding is it's not just the velocity, that feeds into whether a temp cavity is large enough to be effective and have these sorts of effects that he's talking about, where it's significant to wounding or not. And I think a lot of people don't understand that bullet mass, caliber, construction, upset or don't upset, things like that all play into whether temp cavity is actually an effective thing or not.
Absolutely. I had set Matt a diagram the other day showing 3 different projectiles at different velocities, and the one that made the largest permanent and temporary wound, as well as the most depth, was the slowest one, below 2,000 feet per second. And that's the way it often is. When you look at the British example, when they were out colonizing and raping the world, their 577 Martini Henry soft lead bullet was dramatically more destructive than their new 303 round nose. And the British colonial soldiers were quite vociferous in complaining about this. That led to the development of the bullet at the Dum Dum Arsenal in India, as well as the Mark 7 with a hollow space underneath the nose of the projectile to cause rapid upset. Both of those projectiles proved to be a bit more effective than the round nose 303. Neither one was as damaging as the 577 soft lead projectile, but at least they evened the gap compared to the round nose, which just went in and out, was an ice pick, bandaged, boom. When a bullet goes straight through with no upset at all, you get a diameter or slightly less than diameter, because with a rounded nose configuration, you're actually pushing the tissue apart a little bit. So your actual hole through tissue is actually smaller than the diameter of the shank of the bullet, because as the bullet goes through, there is a slight bit of stretch coming out the nose. And so the back of the bullet's not even touching the tissue as it zooms through. So you might have a 30 caliber bullet, but you might have a 25 caliber hole for a bullet that is smooth and doesn't have a cutting edge, which is why a wad cutter style design or something with a sharp leading edge leads to a greater hole.
So the other thing I see in like the backyard ballistics, when people are shooting maybe homemade ballistic gel or whatever the material is, then they're going for, you shoot some of these things and they explode dramatically, or they, flop around. Like I've seen blocks of ballistic gel flip off the table, that sort of thing. Is things I've noticed in hunting and on the street as well, and looking at shootings, is temp cavity can vary dramatically depending on the target. If I tell people, if I've got let's say I got a 22-250 loaded with a 50 grain VMAX, I would make a prairie dog explode. I may or may not harvest the deer that I shoot at, depending on because I got to be very, very careful in my placement and angle and everything else. And if I was to do something like shoot a rhinoceros with it, then I'm almost certainly going to get stomped to death, just because temp cavity and that sort of thing, the size of the target, the nature of the target, it's just not the mass of the bullet, the velocity of the bullet, all that interaction, but target size has quite a bit to do with that as well.
Yeah, and when you're shooting gel, you have different size blocks depending on what projectile you're using. I mean, common sense, right? We have 20-pound blocks, we have 40-pound blocks, 60, 80, even 100-pound blocks of gel, depending on what we're testing. I mean, that's just, you have to encapsulate the entire wound, the permanent cavity, any stretch, all has to be contained in your block to accurately replicate what's going on. Is it perfect? No, but from hundreds of shootings that have been analyzed, we know that the 10% gel, when properly fabricated and validated, is pretty dang close to what we're going to see in the body, with obvious variations. If I'm shooting a more dense structure, it's going to have a little less penetration than in muscle tissue. If I'm shooting a less dense structure like lung, it might have a little more penetration, right? You have to calculate density. You have to calculate a variety of things like that, intermediate barriers, et cetera. But this is all science. It's all able to be done. And it's quite repeatable, and it correlates very directly with shots in living tissue, both animal and shots on the battlefield and in law enforcement and self-defense settings. We have that data. When the Joint Service Wound Ballistics team or the CTTSO TISWIG team or the Joint FBI USMC team or the CHP team after the late 80s and early 90s when they switched from 357 Magnum to 40 Smith & Wesson, when San Diego's doing their study. There's a number of agencies that were doing fantastic data collection at that point. And the results were quite clear, quite repeatable, and were valid across the country. And so we know exactly what projectiles are going to do in the body, give or take, depending on what they hit.
Awesome stuff. So let's see here. So Chuck, you've covered some fast and light for caliber.
Mhm.
You brought that up. Yeah. And you guys have mentioned in the past as well, you've seen them before, and we're going to see them again at some point. We talked about magic beans, talked about wad cutters, talked about fluted solids, talked about temp cavity. I got one that would be nice to discuss. And we know the answer, but it's one of these, for some reason, it comes up in discussions and arguments. Penetration versus expansion.
Or they're directly linked.
So a lot of people talk about they absolutely need to have the most expanding round, but we're not taking consideration. Okay, well, what about that shot placement? And shot placement with necessary penetration, that's a recipe for success, with the expansion being icing on the cake if you get it.
Yeah, I want penetration first.
Yeah.
And I want shot placement. And I want a person with a reliable weapon in their hand.
Yeah.
I'd rather have the old dude with an M16A1 shooting 55 grain M183 who practices 10,000 rounds a year versus some dude with the latest whiz-bang M4 bonded rounds and all the whiz-bang gear who practices 500 rounds a year.
Yep. That's going to hurt feelings.
Yeah, well, sorry.
Let them be hurt.
Yeah.
You got to hit the target first, right?
Yeah.
And then you have to hit it in an important spot.
Yeah. Oh, that's another one.
Your gun has to go bang every time, right? Once you've accomplished those sorts of things, then we can get into the more esoteric stuff. Now, if you're a law enforcement agency, yeah, you should probably be buying a round that offers robust, reliable expansion through intermediate barriers. You're using the public's money, get something decent. And you owe it to the citizens and the officers. You know, if you're a little podunk agency, you really ought to be buying off the same sort of contracts that ammunition companies have for federal government agencies that have massive testing programs in place that can check pressure, check reliability, do extensive quality control. You know, there's a few ammunition vendors out there that have those kind of contracts. Piggyback onto those sorts of things because those controls are in place. If I'm buying from Billy Bob's bait and tackle and hunting shack, and I'm an agency, I'm probably not getting valid pressure testing and quality control checks of the ammunition. Probably not getting proper, sealing of the case mouth and the primers. I don't know what I'm getting. And either do they. And so that's a waste of the public's money. There's just too many variables in there to have it in your ammunition. So you're far better off piggybacking on known contracts or looking at a known contract and adopting it as your own, saying that it must meet all the following standards. And then a vendor that's actually building it for the military can hand you that same data if they're running the ammo on the same production line and go, yeah, well, we just did this federal contract. We've run it on the same line out of the same batch, and here's yours, and here's the test results. So people like, Federal, Spear, Black Hills, Hornady, they can do that usually because they have those kind of contracts. Other folks, maybe not so much. Now for hunting, go for what your heart desires. For an agency looking for duty ammo, different ballgame.
Yeah. Well, I'd even say for personal defense.
Well, you pretty much want it to go bang every time you pull the trigger, huh?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's a reason why established agencies are going with the ammunition they are.
Hopefully, or
Yeah.
maybe Sergeant Smith told Corporal Jones to go find out what's best, and Corporal Jones looked it up on the internet based on some stupid YouTube video. We don't know.
That happens.
It happens too many times. I get calls every week about stuff like this. And it doesn't matter, you know, you're going to buy Gold Dot or HST or whatever. You know, what more is important is the principles behind it.
Mm-hmm.
The actual brand name is not as important as it does this much penetration.
Yep.
It is barrier blind. It offers reliable performance in your duty weapons. And you can get it in a reasonable quantity.
Yeah.
And I tell most agencies to try to have two separate vendors.
I was going to bring that up. Yeah.
Two separate vendors. So you have two loads that are very similar from two separate vendors. By the way, Spear and Federal are the same vendor, right? So, two vendors, Hornady and Spear.
Yeah.
Right? Something like that. Black Hills and Federal. Two separate vendors. And that way your contract, if one company can't get it for you, you try to get it from the other.
And we experienced that just not too long ago.
All the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, you know, that's what I would recommend. And in this day and age, most municipal agencies in the United States should be running a 9mm duty handgun.
Yeah.
It just makes sense. If you're predominantly shooting into vehicles, I could argue that a 40 has some validity still. And if I was an Alaska agency, maybe. But most municipal agencies in lower 48, 9mm works for small statured officers, has an adequate capacity, easy to train, and performance is reasonable this day and age. So you just go with that.
Yeah.
And then you should be running some sort of long gun. Preferably if it's a 5.56, something with a suppressor on it in that 12 to 16 inch range. I still think shotguns have a place, but they require way more training. A shotgun with a slug is pretty impressive when it comes to defeating things like autoglass.
And people.
And large animals, yes. So I don't have a problem with shotguns still being used, but they require more training than an AR type platform.
Yeah. Well, going through a Rob Hott class. So I and this was 2017, I determined shotgun's my weakness. I need to take a shotgun class. So I took Rob Hott shotgun class. Matt and Rob were awesome. Loved the class. I want to go again. It made me absolutely love 1301s, 12 gauge, great gun. But the level of, it's not even complexity, but it took more reps and everything for me to do versus walk on with Pat Rogers in a carbine class. That's easy. That's the easy button.
Easy. An AR-15 is the easiest weapon there is to utilize.
Yeah.
For every veteran in America using an AR-15, you've had more repetitions with it, more training with it, and everything. That is like the Brown best of the modern age, right?
Yeah.
That is the weapon that if you are a veteran, if you are a high-powered target shooter, that's the weapon you ought to be using.
Yeah.
And if you're going to use a handgun, then most people are going to be better served with a 9mm for defensive purposes, just like a duty weapon.
Yeah.
I need to hold on for just 1 second here.
Sure. Fred, do you have anything so far?
Well,
I'm just enjoying this.
To address some of the information flow. That's something that I can actually speak to. Yes, all that data after 9/11 became restricted because we found, complete weapons repair and night vision repair shops that the Taliban had in Afghanistan in the caves, all full of our manuals.
Yeah.
They were using our doctrine and everything. And so, yeah, the contraction, from the shock of discovering that led to so much being restricted.
Yeah.
And now even, we were just informed this week, information. If you receive a magazine at your house and you bring it to work and you leave it unsecured on your desk, that is a privacy breach.
Oh,
according to DOD, because it's got your home address on it. So yeah, there are some serious challenges to disseminating information that can, with the irony of me, the former information warfare disseminator, saying all of this, but yeah, we've probably shot ourselves in the foot being a little over restrictive.
Yeah.
So
the other thing I've seen happen is when Letterman shut down, even though Dr. Fackler told the DOD hierarchy, the people that he trained, the engineers took over again. And there was very little cross-pollination between the medical community, 18 Ds with tons of experience, et cetera, and trauma surgeons and the engineers. And so we have all of these programs pushing forward through the late 90s and into the 2000s that are run by engineers who have no understanding of the anatomy and physiology. And that is an ongoing problem today. And I would sit on the Joint Service Wind Ballistics team, and there would be a few medical people there, but not a lot. Likewise in some of the other organizations. And I think that leads us to a lot of issues. When the Joint Service Wind Ballistics team completed their multi-year study, there was a 331-page report that we completed. When it was released to the public, so to speak, even within the Pentagon, it shrunk down to in the neighborhood of 30 some odd pages. What happened to the other 300 pages? Fortunately, I still have a copy of that long draft, as I do with many of the other papers that are out there. And it is disappointing at best to see what the leadership was denied seeing by mid-level managers at places like Benning and Picatinny and Aberdeen. And the data was filtered so much that it became meaningless. I will tell you that at Letterman, we used to have tons of visitors. We had folks from the FBI, CHP, many municipal law enforcement agencies. We had people from NCIS, people from DCIS, lots of people from Crane. You want to know who never came to the Letterman Army Institute of Research?
YouTubers. Oh,
well, that didn't exist then. This is in the late 80s, early 90s. Who never came were engineers from Aberdeen, Benning, and Picatinny. Not once. The Crane folks were there. They were great, but not the Army folks. There's a reason why the FBI BRF does all of the DOD critical wound ballistics analysis and not some other organizations, because the folks they work and do those tests for have realized who does the testing best. I remember sitting in Coronado one time. We were probably 2003 or 4, something like that, maybe. And we were testing a new round, and it showed great promise. And one of the test organizations wanted, a couple years and several $1 million to do the testing. And Buford Boone stood up and said, "Oh, we can do that next week for you for free." Right there. That stark contrast. We'll get it done in a week for free versus we need millions of dollars in several years. And the best part was Buford did it the next week for free. And that showed you how broken down some of the big military testing was. And I think that that underscored for some of the special mission units were there who they needed to go to for valid data.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's the third time he's been mentioned today.
Yeah, because Buford's probably the best in the business at this, as is his follow-on at the FBI BRF, right? Buford was there for what, almost 30 years? So, I mean, solid dude. I would do a test on the West Coast. Buford at the time was in Virginia, and he would do a test, and we would go like, hey, this is what I got. And he'd go, oh, this is what I got. And it was like a nice cross-check because we were doing two institutions separated by the entire country, serving different masters, so to speak, and we would get the same results within reason.
Yeah, that's awesome.
It was like, dang, almost like there's science here.
That's right.
Yeah. And so, he was a great colleague to work with. And he came into these military meetings because Buford was never in the military. He came into it bringing a wealth of knowledge from the law enforcement side, and he would look at problems with a different eye. And so that is pretty dang amazing that he is so respected in the military despite never having served in it. And I have great respect for him.
I'm messaging him right now saying that we're saying nice things about him on a podcast.
Of course. And Scott Patterson has merely taken that over and kept that tradition going on. And now that the BRF is moved to Huntsville, they have more room, more space, and they're continuing to do just amazing work. Again, if you're a law enforcement agency or a military unit and you have not availed yourself of the FBI BRF information, you are stupid. And you are failing in your duty.
Yeah, it's silly how people say, well, it's the FBI. They lie about everything.
The FBI BRF does not. They are the pinnacle organization for wound ballistics research in the nation, if not the world, as I said earlier. Period. Been there many times.
Yeah.
And looking at different data for folks, and you can always come back to their data. Again, I know because it matches my data.
Yeah.
Amazing.
So how often do things get tested? How do they determine, okay, we need to test out this specific round? Is it things that come to market or something that might show some kind of prominence?
Obviously, they're testing anything that is a duty load, lot, right? And if there's a contract being let out, they test all the different options. They test any load that they are asked to test by other organizations.
Gotcha.
And obviously any rounds that might be of interest, that might pose a threat to their agents or the agent
that makes sense.
That they support. So it could be another organization, unit, or agency asking them. It could be something new technology they're looking at. It can be something that's coming up on a contract.
Yeah.
And it could be lot verification of contracts that have already been let out.
Makes sense.
Yeah, pretty straightforward.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting hearing some people negatively talk about the testing that's going on, and they say, well, they're stuck in, they use Fackler for the example. Oh, they're stuck in his old stuff. Technology has changed. It's so much better. Physics haven't changed.
Technology has changed, and it is so much better. They think all of these organizations and groups are standing still.
Yeah.
So
what do they think we're doing?
Yeah.
Two things that haven't changed are physics and human anatomy.
Correct. Or human physiology, for that matter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I talk to people all the time. They're like, well, blah, 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 blah. I'm like, human physiology hasn't changed in, I don't know, 350,000 years, and physics has never changed. You can't beat physics. A lot of people think they can, but yeah, none of this has changed. So
magic bullets.
Yeah.
That's what they're passing through.
It is sad that everybody wants to throw away all of that hard-won knowledge that came before them. If you do not know your history, you are doomed to repeat it. How many times do we have to hear that?
Yeah. And how it applies everywhere.
every single aspect of life. I mean, we're all sitting around watching the fall of Afghanistan in those last few days, looking and remembering the fall of Saigon. And you're going, what the heck are we repeating this for? Because we knew how not to repeat it. And yet we did it anyway.
Yeah.
Because we didn't learn from our history. The same thing with shrinking military budgets, the same thing with bloated defense contractors, the same thing with tons of defense acquisition stuff. And you just look at that, we keep doing the same stuff over and over and over, and it's so frustrating. I remember sending a letter out in circa 2003 to a government organization that had this great new wonder weapon. And I said, well, you can do the following, things, blah, 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 and you're going to have a success within the next few years and get it in people's hands and field it. Or you can, let your program get bloated and do repeated rounds of testing and modification and completely useless product development, so to speak. And you're going to get something that's never going to be fielded, and it never got fielded. Or the XM25 saga, or even the M17 handgun drama. I mean, like, they didn't even do the final testing in that. They abrogated the final testing. And you look at that and you go, wow. And then we wonder why the things had problems repeatedly. And the fact that you would order a handgun and have the manufacturer of the handgun also pick the ammunition. So in the M17 testing, there was one ammo that was absolutely spectacular. But that handgun did not win the trial, even though it should have. It didn't, and that ammo, as a result, was never fielded because they were buying a package. So we got the M17 with 1990s technology ammunition instead of this other handgun that was equal or actually probably better, with amazing ammunition. Mm-hmm. And then that ammunition, all the leftover ammunition, was offered to the Marine Corps. There were hundreds of thousands of rounds left. And the Marine Corps tested it, and they went, holy cow. I think Sal Finelli said it was the best ammo he'd ever tested for a military handgun. And then the Big Army came down and sat on the Marine Corps leadership and basically told them, do not do anything with this. And so it went away. And we have that over and over and over again. We had the bonded version of SOST, the totem, that we talked about at a NDIA meeting. And nobody bothered to ask Hayes Parks if he would rule positively on it. And so nobody asked, so we never got that ammo. And Hayes said repeatedly, yeah, if you just ask, I'll say yes. So we could have had bonded SOST, which would have been the best combat rifle round in 5.56 and in 308 ever fielded. But nobody asked, so we never got it. Somebody just had to ask Chuck Marsh and the guys at Crane and never got it. Nobody asked. Yeah, it was crazy. So much stuff like that. So yeah, it's sad watching all this stuff. It's sad. I mean, we're going to have this new 6.8 Army rifle. Well, we've been telling the Army for what, since about 1898 that something in the 6.5 to 7 millimeter range is the best caliber, and we knew about it for the 276 Enfield, the 270 Peterson, on and on, the 7 millimeter British bullpup after the war, World War II. We've known about this for years. And instead of putting it in something like a really cool, like the 264 USA, the 277 USA that AMU came up with, we're getting it in a neck down 308 cartridge. Basically, we're getting a 308 with a 6.8 bullet. Like, what's the point? It's stupid. And of course, the practice ammo now is not going to be at the same velocity as the combat ammo. Oh, that's going to be great to practice with. So there's just so many issues.
Yeah. Not learning from yeah.
Whereas that FN 6.5 gun is actually a much better rifle, much better system that some of our allies are pushing, but it's going to get steamrolled if we're not careful. It's super, super unfortunate that it's going this way.
Well, and as Chuck's brought up, and as a matter of, and we've discussed here tonight, those current magic bean bullets, we're having repeats of the light and fast for caliber.
Hate to tell you, they there go out there.
Yeah,
everything just goes in cycles.
Yeah. So maybe in 10, 20 more years, we'll see the new generation of the same thing, just new packaging.
Pretty much, it'll be somebody's new great idea. Everybody gets that good fairy idea, and then some administrator goes, "Oh!"
Yeah. Until we get to energy weapons.
Yeah, well, you will see, right? We'll
Plasma.
See. The 40-watt range.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Come on, Chuck. I see it. I can see there's a comment brewing.
There's all kinds of stuff. You know, those are Doc's brought up rabbit holes on the huge problems historically since the 1800s at minimum with Army small arms acquisition. That why did we have troops in the Spanish-American War carrying black powder rifles, single shot rifles, when the rest of the world had gone to clip-fed Mausers? You know, why was that still a thing? Because our Army small arms acquisition it's been a shit show for well more than 100 years, probably more than 200 years at this point. But those are rabbit holes we can go down for a very long time. One thing I thought I'd ask the doc to speak to is when we're looking at what good wound ballistics or what good performance out of a caliber is, how did the FBI settle on that 12 to 18 inch penetration range? You know, something when you brought up, Matt, people talking about bullets that expand, and you get these huge expansion bullets and they're very impressed with that. I pointed out at the FBI Miami gunfight as an example, if the 9mm armed agents had been carrying NATO ball that day, they'd all been better off. You know, the famous shot, the silver tip shot that failed to penetrate in Michael Platt probably would have went all the way through his chest cavity sideways, hit both lungs and his heart. He would have been, deceased very, very quickly, as opposed to 4 minutes later after shooting 7 agents. So I was hoping Doc could speak to, that 12 to 18 inches not being just some criteria that somebody pulled out of their butt.
No, it was based on anatomy, based on getting a shot into the center of mass from any angle of the body. Let's face it, most of the time we're not shooting at people standing in anatomic position, right? People will be shooting back at you. They might be shooting like this, and you're putting the bullet down through an arm and into the chest cavity across the body. You might have noticed that folks now oftentimes eat a lot of fast food and seem somewhat larger than they used to be. So I've got a 300-pound dude shooting at me like this, and I've got to put rounds down his arm to get into his chest cavity. Is a 6-inch penetration going to be adequate? No, I need more closer to 18 inches to make that distance. So that 12 to 18 inch is pretty much the range that you need to get into where the pump is from any angle. Now, if we're doing pure shots through the eye socket or into the ear, different ball game. But most of the time, you don't get that shot. So that distance is extremely critical. The next thing is the ability to put the rounds into a postcard-sized target. Postcard meaning over the eyes, or turn the postcard this way, over the heart and great vessels. Take your average law enforcement officer or your average CCW holder, or even your average military person who's not in a special mission unit, put a 3x5 card up on a target, have them draw and see if they can put 5 rounds into that at 10, 15 yards. See if they can put 5 rounds into it at 5 yards while they're running sideways to get away from the target. See if they can draw one-handed while holding a shopping bag, a child, a suitcase, and do the same thing from 7 yards. I mean, that's what we're talking about here, right? That's what we're talking about. So I think the best target in the world is a 3x5 card.
Recently, playing cards have taken over. There's a fun, oh, it's a fun drill though. 5 yards, 5 shots, drill, 5 seconds. It's a little small. Oh, it is. It is.
Yeah. From a pure physiologic and anatomical standpoint, a 3x5 card is the optimal target, either horizontal for the eye sockets and vertically for the heart. Yeah. I love the big law enforcement targets where you're putting rounds over into the lung where there's nothing there and you're still passing the course.
Yeah.
So I thought I had mine handy, but the first exposure I had to that card drill, which was a modified 5x5x5 that Guy LeMay Hayes had popularized, which is a heck of a good drill. But I had my card that Tom Gibbons had us doing that. So it's 5 yards on the playing card at 5 seconds. But what he talked about was the history of this and the old school gunfighters, Wild Bill Hickok, things like that, you know, guys like that. And what he found was the old West playing cards were larger than modern playing cards. So I thought I had one sitting right here, and I don't know where it went, but I have my signed, because I passed the drill. Tom signs it and puts a date on there that you accomplished that one. And he had some of those cards made to the historically accurate size from the 1800s, and they're very close to a 3x5 card. So just, some historical nerdery that is I don't know, weirdly pertinent to nowadays.
That's cool. And Gary, Chad Mercer says hi.
Hey, there you go. Howdy.
He just sent a message.
Very kind of him. So 3x5 cards are the way to go. It's really cheap training and it works great. In fact, you take an 8.5x11 piece of paper, throw the 3x5 card. Your 3x5 card is your primary target. The 8.5x11 is the rest of the target, and then you're done. And you can also fold it the 8.5x11 in half, and then put that for the head. It's pretty simple. Most have too large a target zone.
Well, what's great about this specific conversation is, as someone who had limited budget for an agency, I had to figure out, okay, what's going to be a good, and as opposed to spending a lot of money on specialized targets, I went and bought 3x5 cards exactly for that use and staple them on a silhouette. And okay, you're going to hit here and you're going to shoot here.
I just go to the secretaries. I steal a ream of 8.5x11 and 3x5 cards from Staples. I go up, you put the 8.5x11, you put the one card vertical and one horizontal, boom, boom, top and bottom, and you get like 5 points for hitting each of the cards, and you get 1 point if you hit the 8.5x11, and if you miss, you get 0 or minus whatever, and that's your target.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, people need to shoot from close all the way out to 25 or more.
Yeah.
There's been too many instances, like in a shopping court or down a hospital corridor, where your shots are more like 25 to 50 yards, and so you need to be able to make those shots too, particularly if you're law enforcement.
And that's been a really fun part of adopting red dots for us as an agency, is to push people out further back. And they've been loving it. Absolutely. Shooting at a level they haven't been able to do with their irons. And now they're able to do this, and talk about a confidence booster, but also it encourages them to shoot more because they got such positive results.
And I think people need to listen to Bulky and folks that are talking about this, is that you need to be cautious where those rounds go. And these high round count, burn them down kind of things is not probably realistic in today's law enforcement milieu. And you need to know where each round goes. And I'm not talking about taking a shot or 2 shots and lowering your weapon. I'm talking about be deliberate where those shots are going to go.
Yeah.
And red dots help that.
Absolutely.
and you don't have to be front sight focused.
Yeah.
So you can be looking at the whole target as you lay a round down.
Yeah.
Lots of options there. And I think we are in a very strange era in law enforcement and self-defense in this nation, and it can teeter either way, but it's definitely a strange time.
Oh, yeah.
Where we're ignoring past lessons, we're ignoring physiologic and anatomic truths, and we're trying, our groups of the population and administration and stuff are trying to drive through things that don't make scientific sense.
Absolutely. And even worse, just in gen pop internet stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
I mean, the internet is a pox on humanity.
That's bad.
Yeah.
It's truly bad in terms of the availability of garbage that one has to parse through to get down to the nuggets of gold.
If you can find them, if you know how to identify them.
Yep. Yep. It's, pretty dang sad, but there's 6,000 videos on how to manscape yourself.
Yes.
And like, what the heck guy is going to do that when you don't even have basics in your life on how to do simple skills that are necessary for your job? But man, your hair is going to be perfect.
Chuck, do you have any comments about the perfect hair?
Mine's pretty good.
Yeah, it is.
It's perfect. You don't have to worry about it. It's awesome.
So you guys hinted earlier about ammunition scandals and
Oh, yeah.
that's something. Is that something you guys want to get into? Because I think I know what you guys were talking about when you talked about that one.
Oh, there's a whole bunch of things out there.
I think there's one that Fred was involved in.
Yeah, there's one
specifically.
Specifically. That was the Lamar scandal.
And not that he was the source of the scandal.
No. He was the person who broke it open and allowed the truth to come out.
Yeah.
One of the people. But a good person before everyone else did.
Yeah. So, the people from Lamas, I think it started on Light Fighter board that, they wanted people to, use their ammo and report back. And I was working in Colombia then. And
Making coffee.
What's that?
Making coffee.
Yes. I was, I was caressing the beans to their perfect.
Yes.
And so I got some of that ammo and I shot a little bit of it, and I really didn't like the way that it did things to my gun. But and then, there was all kinds of back and forth on the board, and Gary, said that he'd really like to test some of it. So I just boxed it all up and sent it to him, and the world rather quickly was able to find out just how much snake oil this was. That's my memory of it. Doc,
And you're sticking to it.
Yeah, you can expand on it.
Yeah, the sad part was there were a number of people from high-end military units that got duped by this, and many of them staked their reputation on the fact that this was this wonder bullet that was temperature sensing and was made out of, quote, blended metals, etc. But when we put it under a SEM and we did some spectrometry and things on it, it was basically conventional lead bullets. When they in fact said it was lead-free, it was not. And it turned out to be conventional hunting bullets that had been disguised from manufacturers like Hornady and Sierra, etc. And we put that information out there on the internet, and it seemed to touch off a wail of anguish from many people who wanted to believe there was magic and wanted to believe the advertising. Several years later, the DoD finally released their findings and got exact same test results that we had done on the ammunition Fred and a couple other people donated to us. And they, sent out a paper, and then they disbarred the owners of Lamaze from ever working with the federal government again. But it was amazing how easily duped these supposed quiet professionals were when, in fact, they were going on advertising gimmicks. This was extremely overpressure, conventional hunting ammunition that was not law of land warfare legal and was not safe to shoot in a weapon because of the pressure, overpressure. And it certainly was not lead free. It was certainly not blended metal, which actually has a definition. And there are blended metal weapon or projectiles out there. The Powell River ammo was blended metal, and it worked great. It was amazing. But this was not. And it just led to so much drama and strife and threats and things. And people that knew better should have been more skeptical and weren't.
The handgun ammunition that I had, got a hold of and tested and I only messed with the handgun ammo on this, was basically somebody's homemade conventional jacketed soft point, but there was like a lead ball in the nose, and then there was a plastic ball hidden inside the jacket underneath the lead ball. So what they did was they added plastic to the core of the bullet to lighten up the bullet for the size of it, so that they could push it with more velocity, because obviously it's a lighter bullet. So they took kind of a homemade, half-assed, conventional just soft point bullet, and then claimed it was this magical blended metal construction. And because of these unique attributes, they could, do all of this magic stuff. But of course, I can't pressure test, but I was getting pressure signs like flattened primers and things like that out of the ammunition that I did shoot, and then shooting some into a Fackler box, a water box, and recovering them when they did open up. You had a lead, basically look like, I don't know, a double or triple-aught buck shotgun pellet that was flattened out, and a jacket that was shredded, and then this plastic ball that was reminiscent of the old Corbon power ball, except instead of the plastic in the nose, it was flipped. It was lead in the nose, and the plastic was in the base.
Exactly. It's exactly what the handgun rounds were. Yep.
And it wasn't magic.
Nope. And it wasn't lead free, and it wasn't blended metal, and it wasn't anything.
There were magic beans inside.
Bullets that could sense temperature differences.
Yeah. And the stuff would disintegrate on intermediate barriers because it was light, fragile, high-speed varmint rounds, essentially. I mean, it was just appalling. And yet so many people got duped by this. And yes, on a frontal shot, it was pretty devastating to someone because it was conventional hunting ammo designed for varmints. Yeah. So you shot someone in a frontal position, it was pretty destructive. But if something got in the way, an intermediate barrier or whatever, anatomic structure, not work. And that's just one of many ammo dramas over the years.
Yeah. And as we've said already, and there are still some that are current, newer, and people are falling for it.
Yep. Constantly. It's like, wake up, folks. Read your history.
Yeah. Yeah. But again, that takes effort.
It does.
Do you guys want to delve a bit into the Magic 357? I think we covered for the most part.
It ain't magic. It's simply a projectile going in the mid 1,1500 feet per second. As a duty round, it has a lot of recoil, a lot of flash and blast. It, with the right bullet, can penetrate adequately. There's nothing wrong with it if you're using a well-designed bullet, like something in the 140 to 150 grain range. The 125 and the 110s were just simply too light, would fall apart with the construction that was being used in the 70s and 80s. Obviously, once semi-auto transition happened, there was no more work being done on good 357 duty loads. Now, if you have a lever action carbine, yeah, I wouldn't hesitate to use a lever action 357 on deer or hogs or whatever.
Yeah, or people.
Yeah, whatever. Nothing wrong with that, right? Duty load, it ain't viable anymore.
So one of the things that I brought up and really I stirred up a hornet's nest about it was the fact that 357, it's comparing that to 9, you might be looking at some more penetration, but potential wounding, it's poking a hole. Heck, kind of like what we were talking about before.
You get a touch more stretch potentially, but not enough to create serious wounds. With a heavier weight bullet, you can get more penetration, so it's more appropriate for hunting potentially, but probably not worth the reduced magazine capacity, the slower shot to shot, etc. Yeah, I mean, a 357 out of a nice, 686 or Ruger or something, that's going to work fine.
Oh, great for people.
With a Glock 19, I can carry 3 times the ammunition capacity in a weapon that's lighter weight.
You can shoot faster, most likely, or the common shooter can shoot faster.
Yeah. So, I don't know. I just don't see it as viable. I'd rather have a 38 special J frame that's lightweight, easier to control, and it's going to give me the same penetration depth. Maybe not the stretch, maybe not that flash bang effect, but it's going to be easier on my body. And as the older I get and the more damage I have to my hands, the more I appreciate a lower recoiling weapon, because 44 mag and 357 mag hurts my hands now.
Yeah, that's been a really cool thing. And it's not a cool thing, but Bulky brings that up a lot. And I really appreciate that insight because, okay, when we talk about performance, what exactly are we talking about? And in handgun rounds, okay, what's performance? What is it actually doing? Are you gaining advantage using 357 on let's just say a person? They're not behind anything, just self-defense. That versus a 9mm HST 124 plus B. Yeah, you're looking at fairly similar. So what's the advantage? Okay, you might personally prefer 357. Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that at all. But it's just not the best for everyone. Another fun topic that's been discussed ad nauseum: 357 from a snubby. Why?
Yeah, that hurts.
Yeah.
I mean, you get the flashbang effect, but in terms of penetration and tissue damage, it's about the same as the 38 special.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a lot of wasted potential there with all that unburned powder going down. Now you're lighting your target on fire. I mean, there's that interest, but
looks great on YouTube.
Yeah, I'm sure it does. A lot of things look great on YouTube, and then you look at that and I'm going, what the heck are you doing?
Well, and then also what you were saying at the beginning, talking about looking at these older 357 rounds without the flash suppressant, and terminally, they weren't that hot, but they some of them did create a psychological effect.
So, absolutely, just like him, you just never know what's going to happen to the person you're shooting at.
Yeah,
and it's almost that sad corollary that the bad guy is a bullet sponge and soaks up 15 rounds, and the good guy gets one hit from a 22 or a 25 and goes down. I mean, why? But we get people walking into the emergency room all the time.
Yeah,
with multiple hits on them, and the good guy takes the one hit under their body armor and is down.
Yeah,
and it's just, what the heck?
Yeah, I remember in the town that I grew up, a reserve officer was killed due to that. And he took one, I think, just under in the armpit and killed him, and bad guy got to survive.
Yep.
A question came up. Chuck C asks, can you settle an argument for me, please? Was there an FBI 5.56 load using trophy bonded bear claws and low flash powder for SBRs up to 14.5?
Yeah, they're pretty much the entire time FBI was using 5.56 trophy bonded bear claw. That was what they were using. Yeah, they had a nice 5.56 version of it that was really optimized for their duty weapons, and it's a great load. A little more expensive than a gold dot, for example. So like in California, I think you could buy 2 rounds of gold dot for about the one cost of trophy bonded bear claw on the state contract. So most agencies, I simply recommended they went the gold dot because they can get twice as much ammo for the same cost at that time.
Interesting. So with that in mind, quickly, if you're open to it, for 9mm defensive handgun ammunition, what would be your recommendations?
Anything that meets the 8 points of light, that penetrates 12 to 18 inches, that has robust expansion against heavy clothing and intermediate barriers, and is made by a reputable vendor who meets all of the standard quality control checks for pressure and water resistance, etc. Again, the individual brands don't matter so much. Yeah. It matters more the principles, because the names are going to change. Different companies are going to come and go. There was a time Winchester made some of the best law enforcement ammunition in the nation. Not so much. Likewise, Remington made good stuff at one point. Not so much. Right?
Has Ranger gone down?
Ranger
T, is that still anything viable?
Winchester's had some huge quality control issues over the last 10 years. Chuck Haggard, you've seen that.
Yeah, I've personally seen that. I've networked with people who have noticed some of that. I have noted one of the issues they've had with their the Ranger T bullets is they let the tooling get dull, so the skives in the bullets aren't cut correctly. I know Doc doesn't like clear gel, but we were shooting some of it, and a buddy wanted to see what his 127 grain plus P plus load would do. So I'm like, yeah, okay, well, put one in the block, and a bare block of gelatin, the bullet failed to expand, went all the way through. So I would submit to you that if your bullet design is problematic, if you're pushing a bullet at plus P plus velocities out of a Glock 34 and it doesn't expand, there's definitely something wrong with the bullet. I have heard reports of the 147 grain Ranger T and other bullets failing to expand. I know they had a big recall when they had 147 Ranger bonded was the FBI duty load, and they sent a bunch of ammo to the FBI that the casings didn't have the flash holes cut. So the primer's sitting in the pocket, but there's no hole to go through to the gunpowder. So when you cap off the primer, it would pop in the gun. Yep. No flash. There's no flash reaching the gunpowder. And a possibility when you go to clear that, now you got a loose primer rattling around inside your gun, and we know that's not a good thing. And there's a myriad of other issues, just some of it's anecdotal. A friend of mine was teaching a shotgun class, and I don't know if you guys have ever done anything like this, but you ever sliced open a shotgun shell to show your students the components? This is the buckshot, this is the wad, this is the gunpowder. He did that with a Winchester double-aught buckload and found a live primer in the gunpowder.
Oh, wow.
Floating around loose.
I can tell you there's huge issues with 12 gauge shotgun ammo right now, because there was an agency in the Bay Area in California here that was one of the first to adopt the choke shot spread reducing and shot spread eliminating wads back in the 90s. And that stuff was amazing. And then when Federal and Hornady bought out the shot spread reducing patents, they brought out Flight Control and Versatite. And they did not make it to the same quality control standards as the original choke did. And as a result, those loads have never worked as well and have had more quality control issues as the original choke. I hear that Chris Billings from Choke is considering bringing back the original choke loads using the actually properly designed shot spread reducing wad and shot with a precision load, which is the bonded one. And I hope he does. I hope that somebody like Mossberg or somebody jumps on board and maybe adopts it as their issued round, because that would solve a lot of problems. That was such superlative shotgun ammo that it made shotguns extremely viable for a lot of purposes. That bonded precision load would hit bowling pins. I watched Louis Arbuck just rail on bowling pins at 110 yards. with a load that would fly as one piece, like a slug, but when it hit the target, the individual pellets were released from the bonding material. That was a stunning load. Likewise, what we call flight control and Versatite is great, but the original load was even better and more consistent. Because with flight control and Versatite, you always get a few flyers here and there. And that's because the wad is not cut the same as the original one. And I think if we had that option available to us, that would make a difference.
I think I still have a half box of 25 choke.
It was made in Utah there.
That's probably why I still have it. Yeah.
I hope Chris can get that going again. Mossberg's making some good shotguns right now. It would be a perfect pairing if they teamed up with him. I hope somebody could maybe make that happen one day. And shotguns still have a place.
Well, you know Jeremy Stafford, right?
I know Jeremy. I wish Jeremy would maybe hook up with Chris and talk to him.
Yeah.
They could have a perfect pairing right there.
Yeah.
Because right now you can't recommend a Remington 870. The Mossberg guns are working pretty good. And not every agency is going to go with a 1301. Mm-hmm. So pair up the Mossberg and the choke ammo together, and you have a system that would be unbeatable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And affordable.
And would solve a lot of problems for those agencies that don't want to have a scary looking AR.
Yeah.
Or for public in areas where an AR is not viable. And it also gives you the option for punching big holes through cars.
Yeah.
Which an AR is not going to do. So, yeah, lots of options.
So I asked about handgun defensive duty ammo. What about for 5.56? What are the parameters that you usually have?
Same thing, 8 points of light. Does it have adequate penetration? Is it barrier blind? Is it reliable in your weapon system? Can you afford to get enough to train with it? So it could either be a bonded or a monolithic load. Doesn't really matter. You have to be more careful when the barrel length gets down below 11.5 inches or so on a 5.56. But things like trophy bonded bear claw, gold dot are obviously fantastic, as are the monolithics like the GMX and the TSX and things like that. All of them will work. Obviously, with a monolithic load, you can go a little lighter weight than you can with a bonded load and get the same penetration depth. But pick something that you know is reliable and is in duty use with large agencies that do quality control checks.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
And then be careful, with maintenance on your rifles. We had an agency that was having tons of rounds that wouldn't go off. Mm-hmm. And they wanted to blame the ammo and they wanted to blame this and that. But it turned out their weapons, the firing pin was not coming forward enough to actually have proper ignition of the primers. When you actually measured the dents on the primers, they weren't deep enough.
Oh.
And we also had a number of agencies that they would go on a call out, they'd load their AR, and when the call out was over, they would jack the round out of the weapon and put it back in the mag. All of those primers were cracked because that initial load, the firing pin will come in and just lightly tap the primer. Well, that cracked the primers with repeated use of reloading, and the primers were dead. So when they actually went they're on a call out and they actually had to make a shot, it goes click instead of bang.
Yeah.
It's the loudest noise in the history of mankind when it goes click. And so, yeah, don't reload the frickin' round. When it goes in the chamber, it comes out and it goes in the training pile. Never goes back in your duty weapon. Ever. One chambering, I don't care if it's a handgun, it goes in the duty pile. Ain't worth the effort.
When you asked about handgun ammo, Matt, that's all the stuff that Doc's talking about are the reasons why I tell people if you are not using Gold Dot HST critical duty, something like that, you really need to have some sort of articulable reason why you're not doing that.
Yeah.
And a valid reason would be I'm carrying a standing J-frame.
Yeah.
So I'm going to load federal gold medal match wad cutters in it. So, okay, you got an articulable reason that passes the common sense test. But I tell people constantly, if you're not, making one of those ammo picks, probably need to think about what you're doing.
Yeah.
And then what, I don't know if Doc's noticed, but he brought up like Remington shotguns, and then Winchester used to be a powerhouse in the duty ammunition field. And I don't trust them enough anymore to use them personally because of all the quality control issues that I've seen. Whereas Remington was squared away, then they weren't squared away, then they went bankrupt. And now the same people that own Spear and Federal are running Remington. And what I've noticed is their quality control, let's say the past 2-3 years, quality control's really come back. So maybe the ammo doesn't meet your needs with their bullet styles and things like that. But as far as the quality control, what I've seen out of Remington, out of their new stuff, is they've really made a concerted effort to fix past issues with quality control. So we have to pay attention to these things historically because there's some ebb and flow to that. We've talked about that with the revolver. We know when
Absolutely.
we were talking about revolvers, people want to bag on Taurus. The Taurus nowadays is not the Taurus of 10 years ago. And then even really, Winchester is an example, like Smith & Wesson. If you go back to the Bangor Punta days, and Smith & Wesson in the 70s and 80s was putting out garbage guns, so these are things that you need to continue to pay attention to, particularly if you're running like an agency program, where you have multi-year and you're responsible for more than just yourself, that sort of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And unfortunately, people don't seem to recognize or refuse to recognize it is possible for companies to improve, but also decline, but also improve. And so not everything's always getting worse. It is possible for things to be turned around. Just be cautious.
The Remington 62 grain core-locked Ultra Bond in 223 was one of the better duty loads available. So yeah, Remington can make decent ammo when they're quality controlled, just like Winchester can. Everybody can make good ammo if they choose to. The problem is oftentimes the bean counters prevent the production guys from doing it right.
Yeah.
So anything else? Because I'm going to have to head out soon.
Yeah. I was thinking the same thing, understanding what your timeline was. We are right there. So let's get some final thoughts, final plugs, and we'll wrap this up. Fred, what do you got for us? Final thoughts?
It's been a real pleasure, and walk down memory lane and, relearning some history that we need to do that. I think we even talked about it.
Amen. Chuck?
I commonly say that, that Santa Ana guy was pretty smart when he came up with that whole "he who ignores history is doomed to repeat it." And you brought up the historical aspects of this. People want to have new and better and things like that. And we're not talking about a better program for Call of Duty 18 or whatever. What we're talking about is physics and human physiology. And these things haven't changed. Human physiology hadn't changed in like 300,000 years, and physics has always been exactly the same. And you can't cheat any of this stuff with magic BBs. So all of the historical aspect, and there were people who died that in incidents that we have paid attention to, that some of these lessons are hard won and paid for in blood, and it does everybody a disservice to ignore the history of this stuff. And we lose the history because there's so many people who never dig into it. I see that in the law enforcement profession all the time. I'll ask a young cop what Newhall means to them, and I get the deer in the headlights look. These are lessons paid for in blood. The digging into the true science and the true history of this, and not just glossing over it, is important stuff.
Heck yeah.
I still see too many people that buy a gun of the week. Every new thing come out. Buy 2 or 3 of the same handgun.
Chuck
Take
says that
one
too.
and use it as your training gun and master it. Shoot 100 rounds a week minimum. Have one that's your carry gun that's been vetted over a couple hundred to 1,000 rounds. Then have one in a safety box somewhere in case you're in a shooting and your duty gun gets taken into evidence, because you ain't going to see it back for a long time. And then that gives you another one to keep carrying. So, you know, the old 1 is none, 2 is 1, and 3 is better adage works. Stop buying so many flipping guns. Put your money in ammo and training. Yeah. Buy 2 or 3 of the same damn thing. I don't care if it's a Glock, an M&P, a Beretta. I don't care what it is. And then don't buy anymore. Don't buy anymore after that. And train.
I only have 3 staccatos.
Whatever.
Yeah,
Whatever.
I don't know how many Glocks I
2 or
have.
3 of them. And you're a little different because you're doing this professionally, and it's a different. I'm talking about someone that carries a gun, where they're cops, whatever. Yeah. You know, if you're a soldier and you're carrying an M17, buy an M17 for yourself. Whatever you're going to carry, have a training version of it and a backup version of it, and don't waste your time on anything else. That's what I would do.
So regarding pistol terminal ballistics, do you have any final thoughts that you'd like to share?
Yeah. Buy what works. It ain't hard.
And pistols poke holes?
Pistols poke holes. Rifles make bigger holes. Right?
What about shotguns?
Shotguns make really big holes, but with less stretch.
Yeah.
They crush tissue. A number 1 buckshot load crushes a lot of tissue. Right?
Ever since you told me that, I was on the hunt and I was able to buy a couple cases.
Yeah, that works really good. And the shotgun is more accepted in the eyes of many community members.
Yeah.
So, you know, if something goes bump in the night, there ain't nothing wrong with grabbing a 12 gauge. I am more comfortable with an AR-15. That is the most comfortable weapon I am, because I've used it for so many years, so many decades. And I have more training on it and more repetitions on it. But the reality is, where I live, I'll probably be better off if I grab a shotgun or something like an M1 carbine, right? An M1 carbine with soft points is nothing to sneeze at.
Yeah.
So something like that. But the key thing is to be comfortable, to train, and to have enough repetition so when things go very bad, you are not having to fumble. It's just second nature, and you just go to what you need to do to defend yourself, your family, your neighbor, whoever it happens to be. And I think people get wrapped up around all of this other stuff too much.
Yeah.
You don't need the latest whiz bang magic. Get yourself a Gen 3 Glock 19 and buy a pallet worth of ammo if you can, and then train. Yeah. And I don't mean going to the local quarry and randomly shoot. I mean timer. It's on a timer. You got time and accuracy standards.
Use those 3x5 cards.
Yeah, that works real good. There's so much stuff out there. You know, Todd Green was great at putting that kind of stuff out on pistol form. Just amazing. And there's a lot of good stuff out there. And then the other thing I see a lot of is there's a difference between military and law enforcement trainers. Guys that were in a special mission unit for 20 years doing hits in Iraq and Afghanistan. That's a different mission focus than a law enforcement officer who is in an entirely different environment. And I remember one special mission unit guy talking to an agency in California saying, yeah, as you go by, just make sure you do an anchor shot in their head as you go by. And we're like, whoa, dude. Big no.
Yeah, that's a little much.
Yeah, like that ain't going to fly here. So there is, you might be better off in many situations tailoring your training around what you might be facing.
Yeah.
So, but you can always get a little bit from everybody.
Yeah.
Right. And always plus up on your first aid training. always plus up on the healthcare first aid stuff for immediate responder stuff. So, yeah.
Great stuff. It's been too long. I wish I could tell you what year that was that you were here.
Oh, it was before COVID.
Oh yeah, for sure. But yeah, this has been a blast. Thank you. Thanks to the panel. Great discussion, great knowledge. This will be uncut, available to Patreon subscribers immediately, both audio form and video. Big thanks to the viewers, the listeners, the panel. Wonderful discussion. Big thank you to the sponsors, Lucky Gunner, Overwatch Precision, Filster, Primary Arms, Walther. Lastly, big thank you to the Patreon subscribers. If you like what we're doing here, check out patreon.com/primary and secondary. Help support the network. $1 a month gets you access to our Discord, $5 Discord, and a whole lot more, to include these live. You can ask questions as that came up today. You also get access to these completely uncut, so you don't have to worry about commercials or anything like that, both in audio and video. As per the norm, I say this nearly at the end of every episode. I still have a laundry list of topics. These are putting together. This is herding cats. Today's work perfect. But yeah, I have a couple other topics I'm waiting to hear from people. So stay tuned. We have more coming. But that's it for tonight. I'll talk to you later.